Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Jenny White. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael Grande. Good morning. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm tired. Dang it. I'm doing that thing where I'm waking up at like 3:30 in the morning, which isn't great when you get up at 5 anyway. So it's like, I'm not really having the best time right now. So
Well, what are you doing at 3:30 in the morning? Are you out there canvassing the landscape of politics to see what the heck's going on?
No, I usually what I end up doing is praying a lot. Like I try to think of everybody that I can pray for, and I try to just pray for people, because if I get on my phone, then I can't get back to sleep for sure. And you've told me 100 times I should have it in a Faraday bag by the side of my bed anyway. So
yeah, that's right.
Why
I guess I need to get you one.
Well, I actually was shopping for one on Amazon. I didn't know that. I mean, they had like Faraday blankets and everything. And we have a guest that's going to come on next month who is Amy Serrato from Pykoff knows him. He's a teacher and professor, and I think you're going to love him. Did you see the email I sent you about him?
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of economics things. And so he was texting me last night about what happens when the sun, scatters energy, it blows up and scatters energy at you, and it, threatens to ruin the world, shut everything down.
Well, I mean, it will happen at some point. I mean, we had the Carrington event in 1880s or something, when it melted down all the telegraph lines.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, shoot. I totally forgot about that. Yes, you're right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's going to happen. I'm with you. It's not, there's no way of getting around it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you live on a farm and don't think nature's going to outsmart you every day, you're a moron. And if you live in a neighborhood and don't know much about farming, trust me when I say nature will outdo you every day. Outsmart you, outdo you, it's just the way it works.
Nature will win. Well, we remember when you hopped off because the fire was coming down your driveway.
Right?
Hey, you could have been, you remember Sweet Brown?
Oh, yes.
You could have got bronchitis from the fire, from the smoke outside your house.
Oh, I love Sweet
You could have been
Brown.
On the news. We could have had a whole meme series for years.
So great. Lauren says our intro music is mystical and hypnotic, or is it the Oklahoma Capitol Twilight Zone music? It funny. Could be. Not saying it's not. So we have an amazing show today.
Well, I'm
hoping Sherrie Conley is going to be on, because I still can't see her camera. If she's okay. It looks like something is going on with Sherrie, and I can see Kendra Wesson, and I can see Jason Murphy. So it looks like everybody's here. So what are we talking about today?
Local elections, how to run for office, raise some money, what to do, and I think it's important that we do this show, and maybe we need to do a couple of these shows, because if grassroots people can just understand that it's not so complicated and that they can do it, then they won't be so apprehensive about running, because it is, when you don't know what you're doing and you have to, like you get your first ethics, report and all your, you're trying to go through everything and do everything. You're just like, what is happening? I just hope we can shed some light on a lot of things to help people.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely factual. I just now noticed we are not live on Rumble for some reason.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it tends to happen, and there are numbers of people waiting. So, so I'm going to get you guys started while I go and figure out what's going on with Rumble, since we have people actually sitting there and waiting, and yet there's no. We don't have them up on the board here. So I'm going to figure out a way to fix that. So I'm going to let's bring on Jason Murphy first. So how are you doing this morning, sir?
I am doing great. No complaints, except that I'm not live on Rumble for some reason.
Don't get me started. And we pay for this abuse.
Jenny's bane is Rumble. Jenny's bane is Rumble.
Exactly what it is. I hate it so much. Okay, so I gonna pull in Kendra because I can see her. So I'm gonna pull in Kendra. Good morning, Kendra.
Morning.
How are you? Ooh, you look pretty today.
What is going on with my light? It's like really weird, isn't it?
I don't know, but it looked nice. Okay, so I'm going to pull in Sherrie. No, I can't pull in Sherrie. So Sherrie is going to, Sherrie, you're going to have to, can you hear me? Sherrie Conley.
Maybe she can't even hear us.
She may not. I don't know what's going on because she looks like Visit, doesn't she, right now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so Sherrie, if you can hear us, come on when you can. Give me the thumbs up. All right, so let's get started this morning. And I will go and work on Rumble while you guys get going. So let me start here. Kendra, let's start with you. So Kendra, you have actually run for political office and been appointed to an office, correct?
Correct.
All right. So let's start off with you while Jason's hanging on there a second. So tell us what you did how did you run your campaign? What did you think about campaigning? What office did you run for? All of that. Let's start there.
I ran for House District 46 in 2022 or 2021 to 2022. And
at some point,
the years go by. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'd helped door knock and work on campaigns in that way, but I'd never been behind the scenes in the strategy. And I just jumped in and I don't know, it was such a whirlwind. You're right, Michael, the ethics commission, all the different little things that come up. You're trying to talk to everyone you can. You're going to every meeting you can. But I think the most shocking thing for me in my campaign, running as a Republican, I had the hardest time with Republicans.
Explain.
Let's see. Well, I think that when you're doing something, you have a perceived opposition that you're prepared for.
Okay.
It's a lot tougher when the opposition comes from people that you know, trust, and value, right? So I was unprepared for that.
So are you saying that they weren't helpful, or are you saying
there was a lot that were helpful? I just never expected the fraction that came against me pretty hard. And it was just
wait, hold on. People came against you while you were running for office.
Well, it's that whole, it was during the primary. The sitting county GOP chair decided to run She had run before, so she decided to run again after I declared. And so it became
After you declared.
Yes.
Okay.
She had told me she wasn't going to run. We'd voted her in as county chair. One of my questions was, are you going to run for office? Because everyone's saying you want to be county chair to run for office again. And she said, heavens no, I'm not running for office again. But that didn't have a lot of weight on my decision to run. I think I probably would have decided to run either way. But it was perceived in the community that, and by her telling, that I was coming against her. And so it was pretty contentious. It hurt our county a lot. I think we're still recovering from the blowback from that. And then, so while I was running, Ryan Walters was also running, and we got to know each other, work the campaign trail together, and got to know some people in Governor Stitt's office that were working there at that time, Estela Hernandez and other board members. There are 3 people that claim that they created my appointment to happen or caused my appointment to happen. But regardless, Governor Stitt called and asked me to sit on the State Board of Education. I was serving on a local school board at that time. And then January 2023, I started the same time Ryan Walters did, and we jumped in feet first. And then this last campaign season, I ran a Senate campaign or managed a Senate campaign here in Norman.
So you went from running to managing.
Sure, because it's about the greater good. I don't need to be, in the seat. We just need to get good people in the seats. If I need to run, I'll run. I would prefer to be a supporting voice, because when I was in the school board seat, I felt like I was stifled a bit and couldn't say certain things I want to say. And now I get to say whatever I want.
We're so glad you do, Kendra.
So, well, I'm sorry. Adam Hawley said that's what surprised me when running in 2022. Dom's table henchman tried intimidating me a foot from my face. I'm not liking any of this. Okay, so Sherrie is on, so I'm going to bring in Sherrie. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm not sure what, you buy all this fancy equipment so that you can, make it easier, and it just becomes harder. So that's where we're at this morning. I'm having to use my laptop instead of my fancy little camera that I bought.
So did you miss the part about me not being able to get Rumble going this morning, and we paid $25 a month?
Yeah, I was listening. I could hear you guys the whole entire time. I just, I don't know. I've had to use my computer a couple of times, not here at the house. And so I think I've confused my computer. Yeah, I'll have to straighten it out later.
Your computer is already AI. Now we're in real trouble.
Yes. It's got a mind of its own for sure.
Okay, so we were talking with Kendra about what Kendra did, and Kendra has quite a bit of experience. And now, so I want to, before we bring in Jason to talk about campaigns and all of that, I want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. You ran as representative for your district, and you won, and you served. So what made you want to run?
So I was working in the public education sphere. I was a administrator intern for Oklahoma City during the teacher walkout. And it really came before that in 2015. I know it came before that in 2015 when we had the budget crisis, 2014, 2015, I guess. I was working in Newcastle, and, we had heard, we were told by our superintendent that the budget stuff was going to impact our classroom. And so I went home that day and I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to run for office someday. I'm not sure when that's going to be, because I was working on my master's at the time. And so I said, I'll let you know when that is, because I knew that the Lord, he was laying it on my heart, but he was also telling me, pump the brakes. It's not time. So in 2018, when the teacher walkout happened, that's when the Lord said, yeah, it's time.
So how did you, so you said, I'm going to do this. This is what I feel like I need to be doing. Mm-hmm. How did you go about making that happen?
Well, it was kind of a funny story that I tell quite a bit. Can you hear my dog barking? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Distracted. Yeah. Let me close my door.
There's always something. I love live podcasts for this reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
do.
she is very loud, and we have a very high ceiling in there, so it just amplifies it. So when I announced that I was going to run in 2018, it was really early, it was in late March, I think, early April, and there was a meeting that took place in one of my local district towns, and a bunch of people they'd sent it to me and said, you need to go to this meeting. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to go. And it was time for me to leave. And my husband's like, why are you not leaving? And I said, well, I don't know if I'm actually going to run or not. And he said, nope. You're going to this meeting. You'll regret it if you don't. And so when I went, it actually was being put on. And, I was new. I was so raw and had no idea what I was doing. And the guy that was putting it on was actually a Democrat. And he had run for the seat before, and he had one of his buddies that was a Democrat campaign consultant there, and that's how I fell into having a Democrat campaign consultant the first go around. So anyway, I was very raw, but it actually turned out to be perfect because he knew how to beat a Democrat. And he knew how to beat a Republican. So it really turned out in my favor. It's really kind of funny to look back on how that all happened. And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. His grandmother, actually, I taught with her very early.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And, and when I was sitting there in the room with him, I looked at him, I thought, Adam, I know that name from somewhere. And so I said, I think I know you. Tell me who your family is. And so then I found out that I had taught with his grandmother very early on. Sweet lady. And so
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it really is a cool story. But I hate telling my grassroots people that, because like, oh my gosh, you had a Democrat campaign consultant. Of course, when I came in, everybody thought that I was a rhino anyway. And so yeah, I proved them wrong though.
No, for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so after you first got in and you had all of the, okay, I'm going to get in, I'm actually going to do this. You found a campaign consultant. Now, did you keep this guy as you kept going through, or what happened there? I'm curious.
Yeah, I went ahead and used him in my first and my second campaigns because we already had that, rapport built. And I had already laid out, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to run. He completely respected all of that. And he really, I think that he had kind of affinity for me because I knew his grandmother, and he was very, very close to his grandmother. And
well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So you see the sign up here above my head right there?
Yes.
He made that for me when I won. And so yeah, it's, I have very fond memories of the two campaigns that he ran for me because he let me lead. That was one of the things that I loved about how the difference between him and my second campaign consultant that I used, because I completely controlled the narrative on my two campaigns. And that would be one of the messages that I would send out to people who are thinking about running, is that no matter who your campaign consultant is, you drive the narrative. You tell the story that you want to tell. You talk about who you want to be, and don't let them compromise your morals and your values. Don't let them compromise your narrative. And the things that you want to say, and the person, the representative that you want to be, or the senator that you want to be, because they will try to control the story. And if I felt very strongly about it. I'm a very strong personality, and I just said, this is the way it's going to be, and this is the story that I want to tell, and this is how I want to tell it. And he completely respected that and allowed that to happen.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go,
Well, I just want to have Kendra chime in real quick because I think, Kendra, you had some campaign manager issues also, didn't you, at one point?
Yes, I had someone helping on my campaign that I had a hard time with. I just remembered while you're asking.
Well, not to go into any detail, but just to dovetail on Sherrie, that as a candidate, you still would control your campaign, not the campaign manager in that aspect.
I do think so. I think that in this culture right now, we are prone to trusting the expert, the person with, you guys have heard me say this, the person with letters behind their name. And it's all seasoned us to ignore our gut instinct and our knowledge of people. So I think that you take any campaign worker, advisor, consultant as a secondary to your knowledge and your belief. And then, I mean, if you don't win, it's okay. Maybe you weren't meant to win, and you've done it your way, and you've been true to who you are as an individual.
I agree. I think especially if you feel like you've been called by the Lord, to run, if you are a person of faith, you have to go, all right, Lord, what does this campaign look like? What is my message? What is my message? Who am I? And what do I want to bring to this office? What do I believe that I have to bring to the legislature and to the people? And then you go with that. And it's kind of like the medical profession and legal profession. People tend to think, oh, well, he's like what Kendra was saying. They're the ones with the letters behind their name, and they're the ones who've been through school. But ultimately, you have to trust your gut. You got to get a second opinion sometimes in the medical profession and in legal. And you have to go with what you believe God is leading you to do and the message that God's leading you to send out there. And sometimes those people, if you don't choose the right campaign manager, maybe they're not going to give you the right moral counsel. You know what I mean?
That's well said, because I was going to go a little further with that, but I'll wait. So, Sherrie and Kendra, do you want me to put up our little announcement? Do you want me to do that now before we bring Jason in?
I'm so proud of you for getting that done.
You better be, because I was up the first thing this morning. You better be. All right, here it is.
Oh,
Da-da-da-da.
Bravo. Beautiful.
Coming soon. So we are Kendra and Sherrie and I and lots of other people are going to work really hard to bring to the grassroots a convention for liberty-loving people. And we chose the word liberty because I think we all think conservative has been hijacked. Republican has been hijacked. Even freedom has been hijacked. And so we want liberty. We want liberty, period. That's all we want is liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are going to have it at the Okana Resort. It's going to be Thursday night, Friday, and then half of Saturday in November, the 13th, 14th, and 15th. We would love it if you would get it. We haven't gotten the website quite set up to get ready to take payment and that kind of thing. So it'll come. I mean, I'm hoping by midweek next week, it's all put together and all done and all hooked up. But until then, if you want to sponsor a table or be a sponsor, if you're interested in providing a scholarship for people to come, just email me and I will bring it back to the girls and the rest of us that are planning this event. And we will be sure to put your name on a list and get back with you and work with you, because I do believe this is going to be a really, girls, what do you think, ladies?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be.
I think it's going to. So we've already decided that Sherrie Conley, former representative, is going to be doing a whole section on how to read a bill. So we're going to be doing, I think it's going to be great. And I think if you're interested in running a campaign, we're going to have stuff for you there. We're going to train candidates. We're going to have I think it's going to be great. So just mark your calendar for this. Dorn says, is it during working hours? Well, Thursday night is not during working hours. Friday day is during working hours. So if you would like to come Friday day, because it's going to be Saturday morning, because if you buy a ticket to the conference, you're going to get 2 tickets to the water park for free. So we figured that people would probably want to have a good time with their family in the afternoon if they were going to come. So I would just suggest that you make arrangements with your boss to take off now.
It'll be a great place to find volunteers too if you're campaigning. It'll be the doers of Oklahoma. So these will be the people that you're going to want on your team.
So Dana just told me that this is what I get for doing this so fast this morning. It's rope, not rope to, rope to, ROPE2.org. So send me some information. All right. So let's bring in our friend Jason Murphy and let's talk to him this morning about, so Jason, you were a representative, right?
I do think I remember doing that at one time. Yes.
Did you?
I think so.
Okay. So what made you decide that you wanted to get involved in campaigns? Michael, can you flip that again? I can't figure out how to do that. What made you decide you wanted to get into campaigns?
You know, I'd grown up with that interest, being a homeschool student and a graduate, being familiar and taught that there's a real role for Christians to get involved in government.
I love that.
And the idea was you start at the city or the school board and work into state government. And that was the path I followed. I went to run in 1999, was told I wasn't old enough. The city charter said you had to be 25 years of age at the time to run for city council. Got the charter changed. And then came back in 2001, ran for city, held that for 4 years. In 2004, ran for the House and lost. And then in 2006, came back and defeated the person I lost to in 2004.
So I do now that you're telling me, but I didn't before. So how old were you when you ran for city council?
I would have to check the math on that. I think probably 22.
Check the math.
The math.
Homeschool.
You're not that old now, so stop it. I still, though, I mean, I know that you were homeschooled. So was it your parents that got you interested in government? I'm just curious. How did that come up?
Yep. My grandfather had been a Republican from Louisiana back in the days when those weren't popular people. So he had quite a backbone. He's a very courageous guy. And that interest just passed down through the family and various family members throughout the years. So, you know, my early recollections of elections, 1984 and Reagan re-election, just young, but interested in all of those things. And so that was always there.
It's so cool because I don't know. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to me like young people. Now, you guys jump in. Always, please jump over me. It doesn't seem to me now like young people are quite as interested in that, or am I thinking wrong?
I think that there's been a gap in the interest there. And I think that we're seeing a growing interest in the young people. And I think that we have a lot to contribute that to Charlie Kirk and the work that he's done, Riley Gaines and the work that she's done. And I think that the young people who are engaging and fighting for their freedoms are helping to get young people involved and interested in getting into politics.
We know I noticed this year, even though I didn't go to the convention, the Republican convention, there was a squad of younger people that were really interested in politics. And I thought that was like super cool and not something that I had really seen in the number of years since I've been involved, which is, I mean, over a decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should have seen the number of young girls at the conference last year. It was in June was it San Antonio or Austin, Kendra?
The Turning Point USA Young Women's Leadership, San Antonio.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was so uplifting. Oh my God.
It really was. And, just a lot of young women and getting them engaged, talking to them about conservative values and, talking to them about morality and homeschooling their kids and staying home, keeping them out of daycares and that sort of thing, and just being engaged in their family and putting off, a lot of people think that sounds misogynistic, but when we think about taking care of the children that we've brought into this world as misogyny, we've got a problem with the culture. Right. Because you bring children into the world, you should be taking care of them and willing to sacrifice. I wish that I had I wish that I had been a lot more wise whenever my children were younger, because I would have stayed home a lot longer with them than what I did. I mean, I did stay home for a little bit with them, but not as long now as I wish I would have. So it was really, really cool to see them talking to these young ladies, and the ladies just seemed really absorbed in it. And so I hope Kendra and I were wanting to go this year to this year's Young Women's Leadership Conference, but life has just gotten in the way and kept us from being able to do that. And so I hope it grew this year.
So let's go back to Jason just a second. So when you served in the legislature as a representative for the whole 12 years, did you not?
That's right, for sure.
Okay. So that's quite an investment in time. I mean, it's a lot of time to put in.
Yeah.
When you got out, what made you feel like you wanted to get involved in campaigns? Was it just the logical extension of that? I mean, was there something specifically that came to you? I'm just curious.
In some way, ever since 1999, when I first got involved, every campaign cycle, I was finding myself helping people that shared the values that I thought important. And I wholeheartedly believed them. And more often than not, it was just helping individuals with shared values and helping them with the science of campaigning. And it just evolved from my own experiences. And you go through, 25 years of campaign cycles, and the collective knowledge from every one of those cycles builds up over time. And so having that knowledge and just that experience, and then that desire to help good people do good things, really took hold with me, especially as I saw how bad the system was, and how with big government, the outcome is always bad because there's just so many forces that seek to use that government to their advantage. And they do that by co-opting the people that run for office, especially the good ones. And so my mission over time was try to find a system by which I could help good people do good things in a way that they didn't need to rely on the people that rely on big government. And so to this day, if there's someone that wants to run against one of the incumbents who are part of the problem, which is a huge majority of them, then if they're willing to make certain commitments to not be influenced by the people that benefit from big government, then I hear that calling. And if they'll make that commitment, then I want to help them to get the knowledge they need that I've gained over those years, to share that with them. And then in so doing, to help right-size that balance, because a new person going into an election fight, what they'll learn in the first cycle is important, but by the time they're done learning it, it's election day. And oftentimes they then lose, and then they can become very bitter or cynical or just check out. And that happens, I think, to a lot of grassroots candidates. They get into it without knowing the elements, and by the time they learn those, it's too late. And so the role I get to play oftentimes on pretty much every election cycle is I manage to be in the lives of those who want to do things the right way. And then I get to start informing them of some of the logistics of how David can beat Goliath and how they can potentially win that office without depending upon the forces that benefit from big government. And so that's the role I've gotten to play, really dating back to when I was a state representative, and even before, where good people would run for office and I would just be there to help them.
So I kind of want to build on that topic, because for you, for me, like for you, and I'm sure others of you, I have been so saddened and frustrated by the fact that I'll see some really good people come up and they'll run for office and they don't win, and then they just quit. I mean, it discourages them so badly, I guess, that they just quit. And because they lost that campaign doesn't make them less. And I can't figure out. So I'm curious, Kendra. Well, let me start with you though, Jason, since you're right here. Why did you, if you ran and you lost, so you ran for city council, got in city council, decided to go ahead and run as a representative, lost the first time, why did you stick it out?
That incumbent, in my view at that time, which I still hold, hadn't won the race the right way. It ended very badly. And so I knew I needed to, even if I wasn't going to win, I needed to tell the story of what had happened. And then that incumbent also was casting bad votes. And so had he voted well and had he been one of the few who held on, then I shouldn't have run. But between those two factors, I needed to tell that story. And I also knew that he had bad votes, and I was able to talk about those, which is a key component of David defeating Goliath, the courage and the willingness to expose the bad votes of a bad incumbent. And so I did that, and it worked out. And you're right, many candidates do check out, but especially what I call the filing day candidates, those who wait too long and they don't start running until filing day. When I talk to them, I have to be very clear. David doesn't defeat Goliath by showing up at the last minute. Those candidates who want to run next year need to start now. We need to be talking now. And so what I will emphasize is it's fine that you're running, it's good that you're running, but you started too late. So what you have to understand is you're building a foundation. And a year later, then it will be time for them to do it the real way. But part of my success in running through 2 cycles was that when I went back 2 years later, that foundation was still there. And closing that gap became a lot easier because of all of the work from 2 years previous. And that's what makes running for the House so nice, because it's up every 2 years. A grassroots candidate can literally adopt a House district, make it their own, and say, you know what, I'm going to look forward to the opportunity to make new best friends in this district until I am their state representative. And if they will stick to that plan and they will adopt it and own it and not become discouraged by that initial defeat or maybe a second defeat, but will just keep walking, keep knocking, keep talking, then I tell them more likely than not, you're going to get there. And if this is their calling, this is the role that they're meant to play, as long as they stick to it and stay focused on it, we can make it happen.
So Kendra, I'm going to jump to you then. You didn't win when you ran. Why did you stay involved?
Well, I think Jason's advice is spot on. So I was part of the group here in Norman that petitioned to remove 4 city council members and the mayor after our police were defunded. And from that moment, it was just bigger. Like, if we can just realize everything is bigger than us, and that maybe we're not that important, that the role we play wherever we play it is an important role, but it's not more important than us in a personal capacity. And I enjoyed what I saw happen. And when I was putting the logistics together for that campaign for the recall, it was amazing to me how many people were looking to someone to be the leader. And I wasn't necessarily a leader at that time. I was more of a support personnel type person. And but they were all looking at me and they were looking for a leader. No one knew what to do. COVID was happening. Our police were being defunded. Stores were closed. Our kids couldn't go to school. We'd been home with our kids for 3 months and we were all going back, you know what, crazy. And I just realized that someone has to step up and show people how it's done, and just do it and worry about it maybe later. As long as you're doing the right thing and you're doing what you feel is right, it hasn't gone wrong for me at all. I do a whole lot of things. Literally every morning, I'm just like, God, if this is all the things you want me to be doing, then, I'm praying for you to take off my plate where I shouldn't be. But if you want me to do all of this, I just need you to make it happen. And literally every single day, it just happens. I don't even know how. There's nothing I'm doing extraordinary. I think he just puts his little hand in there, makes it all go.
Yeah, I would disagree with you about you not doing anything extraordinary, but I did want to throw this up. Win or lose in a campaign, you bring light to problems the general public are not aware of. And, I think, and we can talk more about that in a second, Jason, but I do think that's part of why you should run. Even, I was going to say, well, I don't even know what to say because I'm trying to choose my words carefully here.
Well, if I can chime in on that too, Jenny. I mean,
you never have to ask. Just shut me up and jump in.
I ran for school board out of the blue because of everything that happened with COVID, and it was a massive learning process. But for me, yeah, I lost, but I take it as my responsibility that we got to this place in this country because of my actions in the past. And if I'm a small part of that, then I can change that. If I had the ability to help put us here, how we are now, then I have the ability to help move us to where we should be also. And that's literally how I think of that. And that's why I've stayed engaged, do the stuff I do with you, even though, I'm massively busy with 5 kids, work multiple jobs and the whole 9 yards. I feel it's my responsibility as an American, as an Oklahoman, to help get us out of this massive tyranny that we live under. I feel like I put us here. I'm part of the problem that put us here, so I can be part of the solution to get us out of here.
And don't you feel like every small thing we do makes a much bigger difference? But if we do nothing, then no difference is made.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yep. I also want to chime in there too. Kendra and I talk a lot about the Lord and about our paths and how he uses circumstances to send us where he wants us to go. And what I see in Kendra's journey is that if she had not been involved in Unite Norman and then made the decision to run for state for representative and lost, actually, she would not have been on the radar of the governor and some of the people in the governor's office in order to journey.
Hold on one second. Sorry, I was trying to fix our Instagram feed. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Okay. Anyway, so if she had not been on the radar of the governor because of everything she had done in the past, she would not have been put on the state school board, and then she would not be doing the things that she's doing now. She has the profile and the reach and the influence that she has now because of that original decision that she made to be involved in Unite Norman. And so God uses our pathway to guide us in the direction and to train us up in the way that he wants us to go. And so she is where she is because of the decisions that she made in the past. And that includes losing that race against Rosecrans.
And I needed a seasoning. I needed to toughen up. I needed people to come at me and be ugly so that I could be a little tougher and a little slower to anger or responses that weren't helpful. And every bit of it, Sherry's right. Every bit of that journey has been worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to point something out. So I talk to people frequently, and people that I talk to will say things to me like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to do it. And I think of all of the foibles that we humans have, being criticized is the worst. It's absolutely the worst. We do not like being criticized. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, because obviously those of us who are here today are pretty darn used to being criticized, and it's like not us that are the issue, but so it's really hard for me to explain. But people really legitimately, Kendra, are scared of being criticized.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at you and I look at Sherrie and because Jason, you've gotten it too as a public official. None of us have, Michael's still here. We're all still here. We don't have big chunks out of us like we were in a shark attack or something. I mean, we still laugh and smile. It's not the end of the world being criticized. And what you said a minute ago, Kendra, I think really is something we need to expound upon. No, you may not. The first time you get criticized, your back kind of goes up and you're like, you get fight or flight, and you're not sure, and you feel like maybe you want to kind of punch back, and it takes some seasoning. I liked what you said about seasoning. It takes that seasoning to figure out, maybe I don't need to care that they called me a poo-poo head or whatever, right?
Well, I take it as a badge of honor now. I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I figured out that I have limited time and energy, and I can spend that energy being mad at someone that no one listens to, or fighting with someone that no one listens to, or I can take that energy and make change and help people and do what's right. And it became an energy thing. And then Pastor James Taylor said something to me one time when I was first in politics. I was like, and they were coming at him. He was keeping his church open. The left was just ripping him up. And I said, how do you handle all this controversy? And he said, you know what I decided a long time ago, Kendra? He said, at my worst, the Lord calls me sinner. And at my best, he calls me his child. And anything in between is just nonsense. And if you redirect to,
it's good,
and focus on who we really answer to and who we really serve, and what would God say about this? And I think God would be pretty darn proud of all of us on this screen today.
Absolutely.
I had forgotten that JT said that, but because he's said that to me on numerous occasions too. And I wanted to put this up because this is good. I was shocked at the amount of people who wanted to pray or say a prayer before I left to go knock on the next door. It was very enlightening and gave me self-go. I love that.
Absolutely. And that is the best. When there was one man that answered a door, and I thought he was kind of coming at me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm door knocking alone. I'm a little bit. And we talked for a minute, and then he was like, I just feel like I want to pray with you. And I was like, I was so off base. My radar was off, and we stood there and we prayed, and I was fine.
Aww.
Yeah. One of the things that, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you were saying something. So I was.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that we have to remember, and Michael kind of touched on this earlier, that we know what kind of job we're doing by the enemies that we are fighting. And so, and then you've got some elected officials who seem to have no enemies at all. And sometimes I would say that if you appear to have no enemies at all, then you may not be doing anything at all.
Well, my local representative put up an article about me this weekend and called me out. And of course, I started to get a little irritated with it. And I thought, it's okay because he's showing people exactly who he is. And I want him to continue doing it. Yeah. And then I went on the thread, and the people that I knew, I texted them directly and asked them, what was going on. And I think we need more of that direct to each other conversation. People used to do that. They would drive to your house and knock on your door to solve an issue because they cared enough about you as a person to do that. And we need to do a lot more of that and a lot less Facebook warrioring.
Yeah, it's biblical too.
I think that's excellent. So Jason, you want to throw anything in there?
It's one of the neat services that when I'm working with a candidate that I get, especially a first time one, that I get to offer, because I did go through a lot of that back in the day. And when you look back on it, the only thing you're going to regret more likely than not is spending the time and the energy to deal with something that you should have just let go. That's really the biggest mistake you'll conclude that you've made as you look back on it years later. And so with that perspective, that's really easy to, it's a lot better. You're in a better position to advise a candidate in the middle of that. And especially in what I call the 2-week bubble, which is the 2 weeks before election day, that environment takes on its own world. And the candidates, they put so much time and effort into it at this point, and that's when the attacks really happen, usually, especially if they've been effective and the dark money is attacking them. And I'll let them know the dark money isn't going to attack you if their polling doesn't show you have a chance. This is actually a good sign. But then it's about coaching them through all the emotions they go through as they deal with that, because the bottom line is those emotions mess up their door-to-door. And the time and energy they're spending on that, sometimes things do need to be responded to. There's not a set rule for that. But that's one of the best things that candidate needs, is just someone that's been through it before, that isn't in that forest and can see it from the distance and can talk them through it reasonably. And really, in a lot of cases, the best response really is no response. It's one of those things where you have to trust the intelligence of the Republican primary voter, especially. And if those voters are inclined to believe out of context attacks to the point that they won't vote for you, then they may not deserve your representation. And so when you look at it like that, I think it's really helpful to the person that's in the middle of it.
Well, that's a pretty good way of looking at it. I think you're right. So what about people who say, my representative stinks, and, I really think I do want to run, but I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what to do. I mean, who wants to go first on that one? Jason, you're up.
Yeah.
Jason, you're still in the spotlight.
Okay. Got it. I accept your nomination. I think that the neat part about it is, in the old days, by that, 10, 15 years ago, before the technology was where it's at now, it was such that someone had to go find a traditional consultant and go through that traditional stair-step process. And there are some good and some bad that go with that. But the danger is that relationship often would drive to big government. So I don't know how to run. It's like a criminal defendant, right? I need to go get an attorney. The attorney takes over and the case goes who knows what direction. That was the same relationship a candidate often had with the consultant. But now the knowledge is getting out there. Someone watching a podcast like this one now has access to seeing all of those here who have been through it, can contact them directly, can learn. And we're seeing that change more and more. And we're going to see a whole lot more of that. More and more resources are going to come online in the form of books and tutorials and all of that, and interviews like this one, that it just really takes those grassroots individuals who are actually looking for real information consumption with broadcasts like this to get connected with people who have been through these things. And so everyone here having run has a story they're sharing here is going to benefit the person listening. So it's really just about information consumption. And so because someone listened to this today, they'll know what I said is you need to start now. So someone listening may actually say, okay, we're going to start now. And, they may reach out and we can work through with the specifics, but the gist of it is they didn't wait until filing day. And because of that, their chance of winning, of David defeating Goliath, it just increased incredibly.
Well, let me just say something really fast about, because I was just elected to town council, and it's a tiny community. I mean, Luther and I served as mayor there for 4 years. So we had, our town council was not good, and there wasn't really any money in the bank, and it was being mismanaged. And so there were people in the town who said, hey, you've done politics, you probably know what you're doing, why don't you run? So I was like, because I had 4 at home that I was homeschooling at the time. So I was legitimately teaching classes, trying to teach them. And, it wasn't as though I was sitting home, popping down bonbons and wondering what there was to stream. I mean, I had things going on, and I thought, okay, well, I guess I do know something. I think I can. Okay. So I said I would. And all I did was I just made a postcard. I mean, I made it myself on my computer, and it was just a postcard, and it was just a picture of the family. And, I just said, I made myself a logo and put it on this little card, this little postcard, and just said the things that I was going to do. I was going to make sure that we knew where the money was going. I wanted to make sure that I could probably dig the postcard out and even show it, like at the convention or something, so people can see what I did, because I didn't think about bringing it up today. But it literally, I just printed it out on the computer, and I printed out about, I guess, 150 or 200 of them. And so I got the list from my county election board of Republicans that voted in elections in that district, in the district of Luther. And so I just kind of randomly chose like 150 people and sent them postcards. And there were only, I think, 200 or 150 people who voted then in that election, and I got 112 of the votes. So it's not as though, which was more than anybody else got. So it's not as though, especially if you're in a smaller town, you're not talking about having to get a political consultant, having to spend, $1 million. I think I spent maybe 150 on, because postage was the worst part, right? So maybe I spent 150 on postage or something to send that. So it wasn't the end of the world, right? I just took the time to do it and went and got the list from the election board, which, by the way, does not come in a file that you can use. Just saying. I had to do a lot of copy paste off a PDF, but I did it and sent it. So just think about that. If you're thinking about running for school board in a small town, if you're thinking about running for town council or city council in a small town, so many people don't vote in these elections. And if you just take the time to put together a postcard, do what I suggested, it at least reminds these people who don't often know that there's an election to go vote. And if they're holding your postcard, guess who gets the vote? Right? Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, door knocking is the number one way to get those votes. But if you are time limited and you get into the race late, and you don't have the opportunity to get to every door, then yes, those postcards in the mailers, or even just something where you can do something called lit dropping, where you're just dropping it off at the door and leaving it, not necessarily taking time to stop and talk to somebody. And especially if your finances are limited, like I'm going to use my first campaign as an example. Like I said, I got into the race in late March or early April, and I hadn't really even decided that I was going to run. I think filing was like the 12th, 13th, and 14th or something like that, and I didn't make the decision specifically saying absolutely yes, I'm doing this until like the 11th of April. And so I literally got in at the very last minute. And I don't recommend that to people, but if you're going to do that, you are going to have, you're going to have to work really, really hard, and beating an incumbent is going to be very difficult in those cases. So I would say that my campaign was not your typical type of campaign, my first one, and being able to beat him. But you definitely have to use your resources correctly. And then I also thought of something while you were talking about making your own card, that the use now of AI and being able to say, you can go on to Grok and ask Grok. And I'm sorry, Jason, I know this, might hurt your business. I don't want it to, because I would never imply that someone should take Grok's suggestions over a physical campaign manager or consultant. But now somebody can get used to the idea of running a campaign by going under Grok and saying, hey, what does it take for me to run a campaign, to run for state representative, and whatever AI platform you're going to use is going to spell it out for you, depending on how you ask the question. So you can get comfortable with the process that way, but then ultimately finding somebody, and that would be the other thing that I would say, is finding somebody who is reputable to run your campaign. Because we've got a lot of campaign consultants out there that we get really good representatives that run for office, and they run for the right reasons, and then they get involved with the wrong campaign consultants, and it tends to hijack their message. And so I would forewarn anyone who is thinking about getting into something to make sure that they are vetting the campaign consultants that they're using, and speak to somebody who they admire. It doesn't have to be their own representative, because they may not like their own representative. But if you have someone that you admire in the House or the Senate, go to them and ask them, hey, who's your campaign consultant? And get advice from somebody who's done it, or use Jason, because he's been there, and he is a stable voice, I believe, in this craziness.
Well, and then don't forget, there are some political consultants who will even misrepresent themselves out there. So you really have to do your due diligence there. And and one thing, I live in an area where we're predominantly behind gates, because I live out in the sticks, and that can make things kind of difficult running, because you can't go to doors, right? I mean, it's really hard, because if there's a gate there, you're not going to roll down something. And even if there's not a gate, I just don't roll down people's driveways. That's not real safe. So
Yeah.
Like you said, a lit drop, where there would be some places that I would take if I had extra postcards or something, that I'd stick them on a gate, or I'd stick them someplace with some tape. But then also too, we had a little coffee shop down here then. And so I would leave my postcards there, so that if somebody wanted to pick them up. So there are all kinds of ways that you can get your name out.
Yep.
You just have to, you just
Yeah.
have to think about it. I think so. Jason, I'm going to throw you back in here again. So tell people what you think. Start over and let's just go in a line. What do you think people need to do if they want to, if they think, you know what, I think I can do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Tell people what to do. Give them a starting point.
Multi-step process. Starting early is important. Knowing the incumbent's stance is also important. You don't want to run against one of, and I'd say there are probably about 10 in the House who are doing what the people's work. So you obviously need to know your incumbent and know where they're at. If you disagreed with them on a single vote, but they're good on so many others, then it's probably best not to run. And then once you know, and the tools for that, by the way, the Oklahoma Conservative Index, the Republican Platform Scorecard, at Oklahoma State Capitol, we'll be publishing something called the People's Audit. We also publish something called the Capital Conformity Tracker. And so there are plenty of tools for one, identifying if the incumbent needs to be challenged, and two, having the material to expose that incumbent's bad votes. If the person is pretty sure that they want to adopt their House district, or maybe it's Senate, but usually unless the person is independently wealthy and or has a large family or contact base in a given Senate district, the House usually makes more sense. And of course, we do get into school boards and city councils from time to time. But the gist of it is reach out to me at that email if there's that interest there. I probably should clarify I don't do consulting. I usually would refer to it as coaching in a volunteer capacity to help good people offset the influence that they won't be accepting from the people that benefit off of state government. And then we'll have that talk and then talk about the myriad of next steps. But one thing I talk about is the David versus Goliath template. How does David defeat Goliath in a campaign? One, he needs time. And so, the filing day example of declaring at filing day and starting a campaign then and winning, that's pretty rare. It does happen. But David needs time to defeat Goliath. That time is usually spent on one-to-one education of the voters who have a high propensity for voting in the upcoming election. So going off of that data, the candidate needs multiple exposures to those individuals so as to, one, make an introduction, define a unique brand, something that will be memorable and stay with that person. And usually on a subsequent visit, start the education process. Here are the top 10 liberal votes of the incumbent. If you support these, don't vote for me. They're doing a great job for you. If you don't, I ask you to vote for me. And those are 80-20 issues. There are so many bad votes that are cast. They're just not being communicated. And that, if anything else, will serve to educate the public in a way that they will become as smart as the audience to this podcast, where we hear all the time about how bad things are and what the bad votes are, but the general public doesn't know. So it's about taking that frustration you get from a podcast like this and educating the public on it through the tool that is an aggressive door-to-door campaign over a length of time that allows that message to be adequately communicated. Mm-hmm. And then the candidate basically has to meet those criteria. They do have to run enough money to hold their own in mail messaging and rapid response. In a sign campaign, they need that identification to make sure people know this is a professional campaign. Your neighbor's showing my sign, so it's okay for you to vote for me. And then when all of those elements come together, David can defeat Goliath, because the average Republican primary voter will be horrified at the votes of that incumbent. But it takes the courage to communicate that, to not be afraid of communicating why the incumbent shouldn't be employed anymore. Just like any other employer, you're talking to a voter who needs to know why they should hire you instead of them. And then it takes the work ethic and the sweat equity to say, I'm going to go door to door to door and communicate this. And all those factors come together and it's branded and packaged well. That's how David defeats Goliath.
That was awesome. So I want to say, since we're over an hour now, I would like to spend the rest of the time debating a subject, but I do want to put this up here because I think it's a big deal. My problem is that I can't pay the bills on a state legislator's salary. What do we do when so many people literally have, I mean, it's just tough. Think about all these people who legitimately have to leave their jobs from February until the end of May to take away the liberty of Oklahomans. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, to sit at the state legislature, that's tough. I guess I was.
Yeah, I can address that because I actually, as an educator, I had to quit my job. I could not take a job from a school district and be a state representative at the same time. A lot of them up there, they keep their jobs, and I guess they go to their employers ahead of time and just say, I can be there on Fridays during that time, and they just make it. Just figure out a way, or they have to leave and figure out something else to do during that time to make it meet. But what's unfortunate, and of course, I think Oklahoma, I don't know, in talking to representatives from all across the United States, with the pay being so different from state to state, Oklahomans who run for office are pretty fortunate that they get the paycheck that they get, because not all states get that. And so I was not making much more as an intern principal as I did as a state legislator. And so, I was able to adjust my pay accordingly, and, my standard of living accordingly. But a lot of people can't do that. And so they have to find something else that's more flexible, doing part-time work, or doing work like what Kendra and Michael are able to do in, working their own hours, whatever that looks like, or being a real estate agent, or, just those things that are more flexible than a 9-to-5er. Just a thought.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else want to chime in on that? Okay, so I wanted to talk about, John chimed in. None of them can. This is where all them envelopes from the known and unknown come into play. I mean, I'm laughing, but that's.
Those envelopes don't pay those envelopes from the known and unknown do not pay your mortgage and your car payment.
For sure.
So you have to keep that in mind, that is not your pay coming in. That is the people's money. And it's the money of the people who are supporting you, or the organizations that are supporting you, and that doesn't count as pay.
Robert makes a good point. Conceptually, I don't think we want a legislature that's so well paid that they get cozy in the position.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, because don't forget, when we've said this, I don't know how many times on this podcast, they were citizen legislators. Remember, when this country was founded, that's what they called them, citizen legislators, meaning that you literally gave up what you were doing because it was your job.
Yeah.
That's how they felt about it. Yeah. It was your job to go to the legislature and stand in for the people in your district. It was your job to do that. And so if you had to put up with not having this or not having that because you were doing your job for your neighbors, then that's the way it was. And we just don't think about that anymore. I mean, we want what we want when we want it, and we don't really care. It's so hard for us to get out of that mold into, I am a citizen legislator. I am a servant legislator. I am doing this for the people in my district. I'm not doing it because I want to, or I want to make some money, or I want to have some power. Right.
Yeah. And being a state legislator is really different than being a federal delegate, because, you know, at the federal delegation, I mean, we've all seen the reports, the financial reports, how they go up there, you know, being worth one amount, and then you know, a few years in, they're worth another amount. And that's a little bit different dynamic than going into the state legislature. Now, I'm not going to say that there are not some people that are getting fat off of their job being a representative, because it definitely, if you know how to work the system, then you definitely can get into places and you know, benefit off of your title and your position.
Associations.
Yes, but just being a representative is not going to make you fat and happy, especially if you are, you know, honest. I mean, I took PAC money. I took money from agencies and organizations and associations, but it did not sway how I voted. And I think that is a misnomer sometimes. People misunderstand that just because you take somebody's money, if you are honest and ethical and moral, you know, you say thank you for the donation, but you know, sometimes we're going to disagree, and I'm not always going to vote the way you asked me to vote, and they know that. And the ones that are legitimate and will honor the idea that you're not always going to agree, they will continue giving to your campaign. Even if you disagree on one item, because you may agree on the next one. But the ones who are trying to buy your votes, you can tell who those are, because if you vote against them, then they may not ever contribute to your campaign again. And so you can tell when you're up there, if you pay attention, you can tell who the honest ones are and who are not. Sorry.
And we won't even talk about in the realm of school board, will we, Michael? We'll just leave that alone right now.
Right.
Okay, so as we get off of here, I wanted to talk about something and have all of us kind of chime in, because it's so going on right now. We have a very large number of people getting into the governor's race, into the gubernatorial race.
Yeah.
There has been commentary, and you can hear it from both sides. And I think I probably said it out of both sides of my mouth. I'm not really sure. But we have talked about things like, well, if you get so many people in a race, then what ends up happening is you don't get the candidate that you want, or then the Democrat ends up winning. Or, I mean, there are all kinds of problems and issues that we've seen, that we know of, when so many people get into one race. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about people getting into races? And I'll give you mine just to get going. So I think particularly in down ballot races, if there are a number of people that want to run, then that district itself should come together, whether you do it under the GOP or whatever it is, you come together and you have several forums where you vet the candidates. And then you actually, by secret ballot, vote on which one you want to go into the race to represent you, or maybe even two. I don't know how that works, but I'm just saying, it seems to me that it would be better to solve that problem in district through a series of vetting events than it would be to just throw 15 people out there and go, may the best man win. Okay, so go. Anybody?
Well, I'll just tell you, I don't see any issue with that. I think it's actually good, and that's what in Edmond last year for mayor, when Brian Shellum ran, and there was 2 or 3 other people that ran, they all came together and said, "Hey, instead of all of us running, let's figure out, who the best candidate is, and then we're just all going to back that person." That's what they did. So I see, I've seen that have some pretty good success, although Brian narrowly lost that race.
Yeah.
But they did come together and do that exact same thing.
I think that in every race, circumstances are different from race to race.
Yeah.
If it's a Republican primary environment, let's say there's a bad incumbent state representative and 10 people want to run against them, that's a good scenario. That's actually good. When I'm working with a candidate and they're running against an incumbent and they're worried about the other people filing, it's like, nope, as long as you outwork them, it's good, because now there will be more hands pulling on that same rope. And the adage is, if you draw that incumbent under 50%, then in the runoff, as long as people come together, then the adage is that incumbent is in trouble. And so there are circumstances, and we could talk about the governor's race, which you brought up. There are some circumstances that aren't that clear cut. So in the governor's race, you have the presumed front runners to date have both been terrible, Drummond and McCall. And so the idea is, if too many conservatives file, grassroots candidates file and split the vote, you could have the worst case scenario, which is that Drummond and McCall go to a runoff. And in that case, that's just bad. It's time to get ready for 4 years, because you're going to have a rhino incumbent, and that will be the opportunity, right? But if the conservatives coalesce around a candidate, then they can pass up McCall, and then runoff between a conservative and Drummond is very interesting, because Drummond could easily lose that. He doesn't have a consistent base. He doesn't have that appeal. He started from the left with special interest money and dark money and barely won against someone who hadn't won before. And now he's pivoting more to be Trumpian, which is going to discourage his original base. And so he is so vulnerable in a one-on-one runoff. He'll likely finish first in the primary. But the question is, who's challenging him in the runoff? Is it McCall, who's a disaster as far as our principles and values go? Or is it a conservative? And so that's where this scenario is very interesting, because if too many conservatives run and split that vote and McCall hits second place, it's a disaster. And so it's very important for those candidates to keep that in mind. You don't want to be the candidate that gave us either McCall or Drummond. And so every race has its own unique circumstances. The other one that I would point to in the past that we had before recent legislation changed this was that in a special election, a primary was winner take all. And so someone could win that special election with 30% of the vote if they finished first. That's changed. They put in a runoff system. But in that scenario, again, the conservatives could divide the vote and a moderate could get it. And so you just really hope that conservative candidates will understand those dynamics and will work with each other. But again, in a race where it's a runoff system normally, and there's just one rhino candidate or incumbent, then the more candidates, the better.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, it's the whole idea of vetting candidates seems to me to work really well in down ballot races like city council, school board. I mean, even representative and senator. I don't know how you do that at the gubernatorial level. I mean, what does that look like?
It's a free country. Anyone can run. Really, you've got to count on those candidates to use good judgment and work together. They'll feel pressure from the grassroots. If the grassroots are saying, are you sure you want to do this? This could really hurt us, because they value what those grassroots opinions are. But there may be candidates who just, nope, I'm going to do it. That's it. It's a free country. You've got to trust at that point, you're just trusting the intelligence of the electorate.
Yeah, I think that this election is going to require some very tough conversations and some very honest conversations moving forward with the grassroots, especially if we've got one more candidate coming in that we're still not sure about. And then, of course, Keating, I don't believe, has announced yet. There's rumors out there that he's going to. And so, of course, I know that he doesn't fall in that grassroots, campaign. But the grassroots is going to have to be very honest. And we're going to have to make a big decision on who we're going to rally behind. And I already see divisions coming forward because people are jumping on to campaigns before we even know who is all in the field. And I think that that is one of the things that we need to do a good job of right now, is talking to the grassroots about, do not put your money all in one basket right now, because we still don't know what the complete field looks like. And then and in that conversation, we need to include that we need to be making a decision as a group as to who we're going to rally behind, because and use that example that Jason gave, in that if we don't, we're going to end up with someone that we don't want in that seat. And that, I mean, worst case scenario, I'm not going to say the name, but worst case scenario, we are in trouble in the state of Oklahoma if that one particular person wins. We will be in trouble.
I think there are several of them actually right now that, I mean, because I've not been happy from Sid from almost the get-go. I mean, he had all of that time during COVID that I think nobody knew what to think about anything. But having watched him since then, he runs the state like a business, not like it's a state, a political entity. He doesn't run it that way. And that's resulted in loss of liberty in a lot of areas, and tax money going to a myriad of pumping up businesses, and all in the name of, we need to, we want to be open for business, we want to be a top 10 state. And I think if we don't really start nailing these people down on what they think their job is as governor, and it's not to make Oklahoma top 10 state, that's not what it is. It's to protect the liberty of everybody, every citizen that's living in the state, and to make sure that the state can be independent of the federal government in the areas in which it must be independent, and to run the state like a place where people that elected them live. So it doesn't have to do with business or anything else. And I think if we don't really start saying what we need a governor to be and what their job should be, I think then we're going to have problems, and people are going to say things like, oh, well, I think this guy's great because, and that's not the job of the governor. Is not to make sure our kids have jobs. That's not what the job of the governor is. The job of the governor is not to make sure we have businesses. That's not what the job of the governor is. I mean, it's to work with the people for what works best for the state. Hold on. There are a couple of
Really good ones.
Yeah, I know. And I hate to just pick and choose. I do like what Sean said. Sorry. And Tammy said, make sure you look into the affiliates, which is 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please define what the true grassroots movements. Man, what happened there? Please define what the true grassroots movement is today. My grassroots may be different than others. Is it rural versus urban? And I think that's kind of a good point, really, because to me, and I'm throwing this question out to everybody on the panel. I mean, does that mean?
Well, I think that the first thing he did that was really important is he defined the term. The way language is being abused, misused, and rewritten to have different meaning, I think that's really important, is to define the term. And the definition of grassroots is a movement of the people, and I think it is different for each of us. And I think what we're looking for in this next governor is someone who's going to actually listen to the people and not operate a monarchy. And even if we can't get these candidates to consolidate, let's remember the power of the grassroots. We can still come together, get behind one. So don't get too caught up in who's going to drop out. I mean, we still have very loud voices. The grassroots across Oklahoma, the people who are the little guys standing up against things on principle, integrity, and morals, are stronger than they've ever been. We're talking to people here in Norman from Tulsa. Tulsa's talking to the Panhandle. The Panhandle's talking to Deep South. We're all talking now. I don't know that this has ever happened in this unison before, but it's beautiful, and we're all pretty much on the same page most of the time.
Well, and what I love about having multiple candidates in there is that those truly conservative candidates tend to force the candidates who think that they're going to win. It forces them to move further to the right because just look at Jenny. I see the question mark on your face. So just think about what happened in the legislature in the 24 election. There were 2 senators that were unseated who were incumbents that had what appeared to be very strong support from the establishment, and they got their hind ends handed to them.
Yes,
they did. And so actually there were 3. I was forgetting about that third one, but I was thinking House member. I wasn't including that one, but a House member and 2 senators that lost their seats that no one would have ever believed that they would lose their elections to someone like what they did. And so when you've got people in the race that are moderates, but then you've got conservatives in there, and those conservatives, the stronger those conservative voices are, the more those moderates are going to have to pull to the right if they know that those people that are conservative have a lot of the say and a lot of the voice of the people, the ear of the people. Sorry, and so it becomes interesting to me to see. I mean, you just think about Gettner Drummond and how he was extremely moderate, like what Jason was saying. He was extremely moderate. Yeah, but he's jumping on board, like Jason said, he's trying to jump on board with Trump. And so his candidacy, his message is moving further to the right, not as far as what we need it to be acceptable. I'm not even going to go there. Okay. I don't want you to think that I agree with him in any way, or that he is the candidate that I'm supporting. I'm not. Okay. But his message has gotten more conservative, and he's had to pull to the right because of the people who are running against him.
That's a question, though, Sherrie. So I don't give a crap about your message. I only care about what you're going to do.
I agree.
If they get their messaging gets pulled to the right,
Yeah.
then how do we know that they're not going to revert to the person that they were before once they finally get in there? So that's another thing that does kind of, not sit well with me. Let me show this really quick. In the special election that I ran in, there was a state representative sending out text messages to the voters in my district trying to recruit conservative candidates to run, even though there had already been 4 candidates to announce that they were running.
Yeah, well, and part of that, Rhonda, is because they felt like your message was more grassroots than what they wanted, and so they were looking for somebody who was more moderate to run than the 4 people who'd already jumped into that race, and that's why that was happening. But the point that I was making about the messaging pulling further to the right is that you can tell the ones that are going to flip-flop on their message and who you cannot trust.
Well,
Because they pull to the right, because they pull their messaging closer, and so you can tell. I mean, we identify the zebra by his stripes, right? And so that was my point about the governor candidates that are in there right now, is that you can tell who's changing their direction based on who they're running against.
Okay, that's a good point. That makes sense. Okay, government should not at all be involved in business. It is not about making Oklahoma a top 10 state. The small towns, small businesses, small farmers, ranchers are being hammered. These are the backbone of so much. grassroots should be okay. I'm going to go, and it's not because she's been my friend for 100 years, but
Yeah, she's spot on.
that's it.
Yeah.
That is the definition. Julia, you win, baby girl. Well done. I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, anybody else? I mean, what do you think, Jason?
Yep, that's pretty close to right on. It's the management corporatist class, oftentimes with the common people, and that those that have that, it's a profit at all cost a class that uses the power of government to achieve those goals.
Yep.
And that's why you see such a disparity in wealth and all of that in society today. The person that's just focusing on earning money the right way through hard, honest work and saving, they have one path, and then they are absolutely being killed by the management class. Those who have that globalist agenda, those who oftentimes are pushing papers to make money, and then using the power of government to basically invent wealth at all levels of government. It gets very complicated at the federal level, but at the state level, it's replicated here as well. And if you could quantify it down, it's that management corporatist class saying we're going to use the power of government to enrich ourselves. And that's just a big game that's played every legislative session. And the hardworking Oklahoman who isn't seeking to do complicated financial mechanisms to wealth that depend on government, that's the individual, that's the grassroots, that's the populace, that's the person that if he gets enough information to know what that is all about, he's going to be with the grassroots candidate every time.
I'm going to kind of tag on to that because I think in my experience, and I was only there 6 years, and so Jason has a lot more experience in that than I do. But one of the things that I noticed is that for me, grassroots is like Julia said, it's about the individual. It's about constitutional freedoms and liberties, and representing families. And that was always my message: is kids and families first, and you have to think about that before you think about business. And I think that's what Jason was getting at, is that you have to decide, are you going to represent the people, or are you going to represent agencies and businesses? And that's the difference between a grassroots candidate and somebody who's considered establishment. And just because you are establishment doesn't necessarily mean you're a rhino. It just means that, and I've said this on several, and I think I've said it with you, Jenny, before, is that you've got really 3 or 4 factions within the Republican Party. You've got the truly conservative, who are physically and socially conservative. You've got those that are socially conservative but physically moderate. And then you've got the physical conservatives and the social moderates. And then you've got those who are just, those who are truly moderate in both senses of the word and tend to be more centrist. And so it's a little bit harder to discern between whether or not they are a Republican or a Democrat. And so, that's where we have to break it down and start looking, into the weeds at the person, where they stand, asking questions about, where to be able to identify whether or not they are physical and social conservatives, or whether they're just conservatives in 1 or 2 areas. Sorry.
I'm looking at some of these comments. Some of them are really great. Let me throw a couple more of them on here. Rhonda says, number 1 job of government is secure and defend our individual freedoms and liberties and provide essential services, but not to be a service provider, which is the problem that we've gotten into. Government being the a la carte service provider for things we don't want to provide for ourselves. And then we go, but our taxes are so high. Now liberals are saying grassroots movement too. So yeah, it does get confusing. A message is a lot different than actions. There are thousands of people who are grassroots who are not engaged in the Republican Party apparatus. Too many are short-sighted and only view certain factions of GOP delegates as grassroots. And that's faulty thinking, and I would agree with that. My concern is that too many grassroots candidates not only cause division, but come the primaries could hurt us more than help us. We have to be extremely organized with these state races to continue sending the message of being fed up versus dividing the grassroots. That's an interesting comment. Change themselves to fit the narrative. That's a temporary stance to manipulate too, which is what we talked about. These are, don't forget, the comments are usually behind what we've talked about because I don't get to them, but also because we have a lag on our broadcast. The reason I can't run. Every time, Jules, every time.
I love you, Julia. I love you.
Just kills me. Dana says 100%. And this one killed me. Jenny would not be a good poker player. I can't. I'm terrible at that. I completely agree. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad.
I've had to get better. I'm still not good at it, but I've had to definitely work on it.
But see, I'm afraid if I make them stop, it'll come out. I might just start doing that or something crazy. Who knows? You describe a problem with too many good candidates. I don't see that as a problem. I see it as a very good thing in the long run. Businesses are globally owned. Unless you own a ranch, we see how fast they're wanting to take over that as well. But that's, again, though, Timmy, that's another good reason to really push with our candidates that you're not worried about the businesses coming to this state. You're worried about how to protect our individual freedoms. That's what you're worried about. Everything else will come because, and let me make this point just briefly, because I know we're running long. If you're protecting my individual liberty, you can't protect my individual liberty if I have a business that I'm sinking my heart and soul and my own finances into. And yet I'm competing with a business that you've given as a state tax dollars, my tax dollars, to elevate them above me. That's not protecting my individual liberty. And you can't, Governor Stitt, come back and tell me, well, but I'm making sure that we have jobs here. We need to make sure we have jobs. You can't. It's a null and void argument because your job is only to protect my individual liberty. And if you can't do that because you need to elevate one business above another using my tax dollars, my liberty's nothing. It means nothing. It's worthless.
Yeah. And, there were several businesses that I pushed back on a couple of years ago when they were working on expanding up in Pryor. Do you remember that, where they were trying to get those battery companies in?
Yes.
The first thing I did whenever I found out, they didn't want us to know who the battery companies were because they didn't want that to get leaked. But I also think that there's also a possibility that they didn't want us to be able to go look that company up. And that was the first thing I did, that whenever I found out who those companies were, that they were wanting to give our tax dollars to bring jobs into a specific area. Again, you're picking winners and losers. You're picking areas of the state. You're picking districts in the state. You're picking citizens in a state to give Oklahoma taxpayer dollars from all over the state into one area. So picking winners and losers. And so whenever I started doing the research into those companies, I was like, these people are completely against everything that Oklahomans stand for. Oil and gas industry has carried this state for years. And then you want to bring in a battery. I'm sorry, I'm going off. You want to bring in a battery company that wants to kill the oil and gas industry. I'm sorry. That is a no vote for me. I'm telling you that up front before we even get started. And so, I think that I cultivating the message and getting the people who are running for office to understand that they got to look below the surface and look downstream to see what the impacts are. That would be another thing that I would really want to educate, and that maybe we need to address that in our conference in November is, impressing upon the candidates to look downstream at the legislation that they're looking at so that they can make sure that they're not supporting something that's going to be bad for Oklahoma. And I kind of got
You mean
off.
like an aluminum smelter planet or endless AI data centers
Yeah. And battery companies
and battery companies?
and electric vehicle companies that never even build a vehicle in your state. And
Gosh, did we have that here? There are also factions within factions that Sherrie mentioned. I personally know many people who are 99% alignment on issues candidates, but they fight each other over personality preferences and desire for power. People don't want to hear truths. They want to hear what they want to hear. And unfortunately, it boils down to so much of that. Well, let's try to wind it up here because we're already at an hour and 45 and we do want people to watch. How about if we do this? We'll just kind of do a round robin then. So Sherrie, even though you were just talking, I'll start with you. How do you kind of want to sign off on this particular podcast?
Well, I would just encourage anyone who's thinking about running to first pray about it. Just listen to, the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit is saying to them, because ultimately, if you're not supposed to run, it can create those candidates who run once and then they never run again. Anyway, that's just kind of one thing, but I think that, starting doing the digging now and start digging into if they're going to run against somebody, to start doing their homework, like Jason said, do their homework on the person that they're thinking about running against, and make the decision as to whether or not they truly believe that that person needs to be replaced. And then if they believe that that person does, then to start working on finding a good campaign manager and, starting to work on and just starting going and visiting your city council, visiting your state chambers, and getting people to know who you are before you even announce that you're going to run.
All right, Michael.
Well said, Sherrie. I want to hit something that we didn't really talk much about that I think is kind of a critical component for grassroots people, especially. That's on the financing side. And you do need money. You're going to have some money in one way or another. And it's not magically going to appear. You have to ask. You have to get comfortable asking people for money. It should just be secondary. You introduce yourself, you talk about whatever, ask them for money at the same time. We raised a lot of money in my school board campaign. We raised $36,000, which is a pretty substantial amount of money. But it's only because I got over the fear of literally asking people for money. I just literally would say, you want to help these kids, you want to turn things around. I need your help. If you can't door knock, then just give me, $10, $20. And in the vein of asking money, Jenny, which you're not very good at, because I tell you all the time, just for people that are on here, Jenny still needs our help. She's still fighting the court case over the election board issue, and she's going to have some pretty substantial bills, and she does need our help, even just $10 or $20 here or there, once a month, whatever, if someone can donate some more, but she does need our help. But just get in the habit of, it's just part of your job. Part of your job is dealing with money and finances. Just get used to asking for money.
That's it.
Well, that's very good, and thank you. Okay, Jason?
Is he frozen? Oh, there he is.
He's on mute.
Wait.
Hey.
Oh, you're on mute, Jason.
Yep. The starting early part is the point I would emphasize. I think that, again, filing day candidates, if we're talking and you're a filing day candidate, the message from me will be, this is round one. We'll do this right next. And so this is the time to start. If anyone, and we need someone to, in some way, shape, or form, even if you don't want to run yourself, but you want to help recruit a candidate, there are so many House districts that needs a good, they need adopted. And so if someone hasn't adopted your House district, to hold that incumbent accountable, then even if you're not going to run, reach out. Let's talk about it. I may know if someone is in that position, and it may be that isn't your thing to do. Someone else is already doing it, and I'll let you know that. But if you will adopt a House district, either to help recruit and support someone to run or to do it yourself, the time to do that is now, because by the time we get to next session and filing day, it'll be too late. It'll still be fine to do it, but it'll be for the next cycle in all reality. So stress the immediacy of all of this.
Kendra?
So I think one of the first things I would do is decide if I'm running for office to fit in with the group or to stand out. Because if you're doing it for the right reasons and doing it the right way, you're going to be a standout kind of person. So you're not going to fit in with the cliques. You're not going to be invited to the cool kids parties, and you got to be okay with that. The second thing is I've seen some people be really, really successful when their spouse is advocating for them. So I think your family is a huge piece of this. I'm not saying you can't win without your spouse. And if your spouse isn't into it and you still want to run, that's fine. But when the spouse is into it and that support piece and also advocating for you, we've seen some great legislators come out of situations like that and stay in office because their wife or husband is a huge cheerleader for them and believes in them. Their kids are out talking about them and believing in them. And I really didn't want to involve my family in my race because I was worried about the blowback for them. And looking back, I shouldn't have hindered their voices. They wanted to support me. They wanted to help more. And I kept them in the wings. So don't do that. If you're in this race, your family's involved, no matter what, go ahead and jump in.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I enjoyed listening to everybody. I thought this was an incredibly informative podcast.
Yeah. Well, and I will say one more thing, and I'm sure Sherrie and Kendra and Jason will agree with me. And even you too, Jenny, through that entire process of the fire of, trying to figure it out all by yourself. And, you meet so many new people and become friends, and you yourself as a person, you grow tremendously when you're out there knocking doors and getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that you would normally never do. I mean, I'm a much better person now, post-election loss than I ever was before. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I will second that, Michael. Before I ran for my race, I would have never put myself in that position to be criticized and ridiculed and publicly humiliated. And I mean, it just
stop. You're gonna make nobody want to run.
No, I'm saying that I was afraid. I was afraid to do that. But then whenever I said, you know what, I need to step out of my comfort zone and I need to do this because this is for kids and families. And so when I did that, then I too have grown from this whole process because it's not I was not brave before. And so I would encourage anybody who says I'm not brave, I would encourage them to dig deep and find the why, find the reason why. If something makes you mad, then you need to take that anger and turn it into a power a force in order to be a change agent.
Very good.
All right, let me follow up with a great podcast. Julia forgot. Don't know how that happened. Brooke McGowan, our friend from North Carolina, who just barely lost her race to be the state GOP chair. It just breaks my heart. We're so sorry. And your speech was phenomenal, by the way, Brooke. And you're right. You better work for an audience of one. Yep. You learn to run or get out of Dodge in a hurry. Nothing like opening a door. Okay. We're going to take that one off because not everybody does that, right? All right, guys, thank you so much for being with us today. I thought this was a stellar podcast, and I'm so looking for us being all together in November at Okana so that we can talk more about this and have access to, this kind of information for people who need it. So please, again, put that on your calendar. Don't forget, I'm going to throw this in one more time. November. Oh, the date's at the bottom. You can't really see. It's November 13th through 15th. So if you've got any questions, let us know. And guys, thank you again so much. Michael, you're awesome as always. Jason, thank you so much. Ladies, you're the best. And don't forget, this afternoon at 1 p.m., we are going to have a special with Representative Brad Bowles, who passed the behind the meter legislation this last session. And it's already bringing in a host of AI database data center inquiries, let's just say inquiries into Oklahoma. And we probably need to have a discussion about that. So Representative Bowles has said that he would come on with us at 1 o'clock. And so Sandra Trawick and I, and hopefully Michael will have time, will be on talking with Representative Bowles at 1 p.m. So please be here exactly where you are. We'll see you then. And again, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you. You're a wonderful audience. We're always so grateful to know that you tune in. So thank you so very much. And we'll see you again at 1 o'clock today or at 9 a.m. on Friday when we talk to the Pike Off OTA, our friends at Pike Off OTA, Kelly Wilson and Whitney Mullica. And so we'll see you again either this afternoon at 1, hopefully both, this afternoon at 1 and Friday at 9 a.m. Thanks again for being with us. And thank you so much, guests. You're awesome. We love you. Thanks so much.